The radical left's agendas are challenging American values, but conservatives like you haven't forgotten what this country was built on. My friends, the Heritage Foundation exists to make sure your voice is heard and to represent your values in the D.C. swamp. The Heritage Foundation stands for your values and won't give up the fight because they know you never will. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, Mr. and Mrs. America. It's a great evening. We have our wonderful president with us, President Donald J. Trump. Mr. President, how are you today, sir?
I'm very good. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you.
It's a great honor to have you here, as you know, and you're very, very busy. First of all, I don't know where you get all this energy, but you're very busy. It's an amazing thing. I'm serious about this, though. You wake up in the morning, you say, there's things to do. I'm president for a short period of time, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to take on the hardest things in the world and do them. Is that your mentality?
Well, even in the campaign, I campaigned, it was 120 days out, and I said, you know what, every day, and I went every day. I didn't do anything. I didn't do golf. I didn't do sports. I didn't do anything. All I did was work, and I did 7 days a week, and I did, many rallies, oftentimes 2 or 3 a day, toward the end at least. And it was amazing. And I noticed that my opponent, Kamala, who you have great respect for, I know you think she's fantastic, would have been a fantastic president. Yes. But Kamala should put out her sheet. They put it out once a week, and it would be like she's off 3-4 days, or she was taking these huge chunks of time and not doing anything. And I said, you're going for the presidency of the United States. They would call that the gold ring, right? And you got 120 days. I would think every single day you have to be on. And she didn't do Joe Rogan. She didn't do a lot of the shows she could have done. And I don't know if she did you, but I tend to doubt it. But
nope.
Certainly she should have done. But she didn't do a lot of things. And she had a lot of time off. And I said, when you have this one shot at something, you have to do it. And, I worked, I don't think I've ever worked certainly more consistently than that. And it's just a carryover. We're doing a lot of great things. I think our country right now, we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. They told me yesterday in the Oval Office, Mark, they were in, as you know, the really great leaders of great countries, very substantial countries, great countries, rich countries. They said the United States is the hottest country in the world right now. And everybody says essentially in the same pretty similar terms that a year ago our country was dead, and now you've got the hottest country in the world, and we are. The United States is the hottest country anywhere in the world right now.
Yeah, it is, and you've done that because clearly it was one of the coldest countries when Biden was president. Let me ask you a question.
It was cold, that's right.
You've got a lot of balls in the air with this Russia and Ukraine thing. You've got NATO, you got these NATO countries, you've got our national security interests, you've got Russia and Ukraine, their interests, and so forth and so on. Is there a method to this? In other words, you talk to the two main people first, then you talk to NATO. Is there a process here, or you just kind of go with the flow?
Well, it's probably instinct more than process. I have instincts. And, I've lived with my instinct about things. Even running for president, I had an instinct I'd win the first time. And I did even better the second time, as you know. I did much better.
Yeah.
But bad things happened. You covered probably better than anybody.
Yeah.
It was a disgrace. But, now I'm here. And a lot of big things are being found out about the election process from the first time and the second time, with all of the Comey stuff and all of the horrible things with Hillary and everything. And now this term, though, is far more powerful and I think far more important than the second term could have been. Far more.
All right. So obviously you met with Putin, you met with Zelensky, you met with some of these NATO leaders and so forth. Are you optimistic? I know there's territorial issues, there's security issues, and God knows what else.
Well, you have to be a little bit optimistic. It's complicated. I've settled 6 wars, and a lot of people say 7 because there's one that nobody knows about. But I've settled 6 wars, and we did the Iran wiped out their whole nuclear capability, Beautiful. Which they would have used against Israel in 2 seconds if they had the chance. But we wiped it out. Did so many things, but the one that I thought would be the easiest was this one, actually, or one of the easier ones. And, like India and Pakistan, that was getting ready for nuclear weapons. They were shooting down airplanes from each other. And, there was a lot of bad things happening with many of them. Even the Congo, you go to Africa, the Congo and Rwanda, they've been fighting for 31 years. And I got it settled, all settled. They're all happy. Everybody's settled. Nobody's being killed. And it's, a lot of amazing things. You saw the Azerbaijan. That was a big one going on for 34, 35 years with Albania. Think of that. I mean, going on for years. And I got to know the heads, and I got to know them through trade. I was dealing with them a little bit. I said, why are you guys fighting? And then I said, I'm not going to do a trade deal if you guys are going to fight. It's crazy. Anyway, one thing led to another, and I got that one settled. And that was a one that people said you couldn't settle it. Even when I had them both in the Oval Office at the end when they were getting ready to sign, they were sitting next to each other. And they were trying to get away. They didn't feel good. By the end of an hour, they were hugging each other and congratulating each other. It was beautiful to watch, actually. But I've done all of them, and it's nobody's ever done anything like that in 6 months, or in a whole lifetime, or frankly, in 8 years, nobody's ever done. And most presidents never did one. Stopping 6 wars and doing all of the other things. We have the greatest economy right now. We have an unbelievable economy, But I like doing it. I like doing it. I love stopping the wars. I thought, though, that this one, because I actually had a good relationship with President Putin the first term, and despite the fact that we had Russia, don't forget, that's not easy to overcome when he sees these whack jobs. And he knew it was false because he wasn't involved. Not to say he's an angel, by the way, but he knew it was all a made-up thing, and, he probably thought we were totally crazy, this country. And we were. It was a very corrupt, bad situation. And actually put us in danger. If he and I didn't understand each other, it would have actually had us. We would have actually been in danger as a country.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've heard talk about security arrangements where the Europeans would lead the way. And also territorial concessions. We don't really know what that means yet.
Right.
Obviously, things, and it'd be foolish to reveal all this stuff. But in terms of security, they're really capable of the Europeans helping secure Ukraine because you have them beefing up their military. They can buy some of the best weapons on the face of the earth from us. Is that what you have in mind? Well,
they can. And, Biden spent $350 billion, it looks like, okay? Much more than $300 billion. Can you believe this? Mm-hmm. And spent all of that money, much of it in cash, much of it in weapons, but bought them tremendous amount. It cost the United States a fortune. And we have an ocean in between. We shouldn't have been much involved. If we could solve a war, it's great. They lose 5,000 to 7,000 people a week. And if I can do that for any country, I'd love to do that. I don't care if there's an ocean or no ocean between us. But in our case, there's an ocean in between. So Europe spent $100 billion, and that's a lot of money, but it's not $350 billion. And I was complaining about this for you. One of the reasons I ran, I said, this guy, why is he doing this? Look, he was grossly incompetent. He was incompetent 40 years ago, too. He didn't change so much, but he was really bad. And he spent $350 billion. I said, we're not going to do that. So the first thing I did is I got a rare earth deal from them, and that was worth more than the $350. So I felt at least better for the American taxpayer. And then most recently, I did what I did. I made a deal with NATO that NATO will buy the missiles and buy the weapons and buy everything else. It'll all go through NATO. They'll pay us. And we're not spending any money on the deal. People are amazed, actually, but we're not spending any money. Biden used to give away $60, $70 billion every time the president would come here. As you know, President Zelensky would come in and he'd say, this and that, and Biden would give him 60, 70, maybe even $100 billion. And you are a man that works hard for your money when you hear $100 billion, not $100 million. That's a lot, Mark, right? $100 billion with a B. And I don't blame Zelensky if you can do that. You're P.T. Barnum, the greatest salesman on earth, the greatest show on earth, right? But he got it. And to a point where we, are probably at that $350 billion mark. Nobody can even explain. Nobody even knows. If you say, give me a reconciliation, I want to see exactly. They don't even know where to start. The whole thing is ridiculous. But more importantly, the death being caused over there is incredible. So we're going to try and stop it, and I think we have a good shot. I had a very successful meeting with President Putin. I had a very successful meeting with President Zelensky, and now I thought it would be better if they met without me, just to see. I want to see what goes on. They had a hard relationship, very bad relationship, and now we'll see how they do. And if necessary, and it probably would be, but if necessary, I'll go and I'll probably be able to get it closed. I just want to see what happens at the meeting. So they're in the process of setting it up, and we're going to see what happens. But you got to stop the killing, Mark. It's too much killing. I don't care. You don't have to be. We're not. Again, nobody from America is being killed. We're not being killed. The United States soldiers aren't involved. We're not. We have no boots on the ground. But when you lose 6,000, 5,000, 7,000 young people, and then you also lose some people from the towns and cities as missiles get lobbed into them. Can you imagine living like that, where you have no idea whether or not your building's going to collapse on top of you? And that's where it is. And we have a shot, and I think I should do that. But it's when you do 6 of them, and they never even talk about that. You're the only one that mentions it. And these are 6 big ones. These are not these. And these fights were rampant. They were going. And how about Thailand and Cambodia? I mean, these were serious wars. That was just starting, but a lot of people were killed on the border. And I was talking to one of them, and I said, "What are you doing with the war?" He said, "Yes, I am. I am starting. We will have war." I said, "How long have you been fighting?" 500 years. I said, "That's a long time." But they've been fighting on and off. I said, when I heard 500 years, that was a little disconcerting. I said, that's a long time. But they've been fighting 500, over the years. Over years and years, they fight. They fight, then they go back to what they do, then they fight. And I was able to stop it. And not only able to stop it, the 2 gentlemen got to be very friendly in the list. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen, but I stopped the war. So in theory, they should talk about those things, but nobody ever talks. You're the only one that talks about them. And these were serious. Look, India and Pakistan, 6 planes were shot down, and it was getting worse and worse. You saw that. And those are 2 nuclear places. Serbia and Kosovo is another one. I mean, that was going to be a disaster, and I stopped it. And there's one other one that I can't talk about that I stopped before it got started. and it's an honor to do it. You know how many people I saved? I saved like hundreds of thousands and even millions of people. That's the good feeling.
Now, let me ask you this, because I posted on this. When you look at Russia and Ukraine, Russia has been very aggressive towards Ukraine, Georgia, took the Crimea and so forth under Democrat and Republican presidents that preceded you.
Yeah.
And they invaded when you left office and Biden came in. It's like they waited. There's Biden, right. And then they moved.
They would have never done it with me, yeah.
And they never did. They didn't even think about it.
Putin said we wouldn't have done it if Trump were president. He made a strong statement the other. I didn't ask him to say it. He said this would have never happened. You know, it really started with Obama because Obama gave away Crimea.
Right.
And Crimea was the heart and soul of that country. It's beautiful. It's, this massive piece of land stuck out right in the ocean, right in the
Black Sea.
So beautiful. I mean, it's so beautiful. And Obama said, you give it up to Russia. You know, then they say they like to say, that's just a soundbite, it's a standard. Trump was weak on Russia. I'm the one that stopped the pipeline, Nord Stream 2. They never even heard of Nord Stream 2. I'm the one that gave them javelins. Obama gave them sheets and I gave them javelins. Then they say Trump was weak. These people are con artists, and Putin will tell you that. Putin said, I'd hate to see if you were weak, I'd hate to see you if you were strong because you have been brutal. But I get along with Putin, and that's a good thing. It's two nuclear powers. It's always good to get along, right?
Well, apparently Hillary got along with Putin in her own strange way, trying to turn all that against you. Let me ask you this. I think this is probably why, look, I have no inside information. It's probably why Zelensky's nervous. He looks back and he says, okay, the only guy that stops these people is Trump. Now, what the hell are we going to do when Trump's gone? I'm supposed to rely on some Democrat or some weak Republican, so that's probably gone through his head, don't you think?
It could be. It could be. But I'll tell you what, when Barack Hussein Obama gave away, he told them, you just give it up. There's not going to be any fighting. In other words, the United States wasn't going to be backing you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they gave it up, and the guy that gave it up is perhaps questionable, too. But they gave it up to Russia. Think of that. Mm-hmm. So they gave it up to Russia, and that was really the beginning of a disastrous long period for that country. That was the beginning, and nobody talks about that. If I gave up that land, I'd be on the front page of every paper for the next 20 years. When Obama gave it up, they don't even talk about it. Can you imagine? And then they talk about Donald Trump is friendly with Putin. I didn't give him Crimea. Crimea is massive. I would say like the size of Texas or something in the middle of the ocean. It's gorgeous. And they gave it up because of Obama. And the press doesn't even talk about it.
Well, they don't talk about part of Georgia was taken under Republican president. They don't talk about a lot.
Bush.
But nothing was taken under you, was it?
No. They took the whole thing, the way I look at it. If I didn't come along, they took the whole thing under Biden. They took Crimea under Obama. And they took a big chunk of Georgia under Bush.
Right.
But with me, what was taken? Nothing was taken. Nothing. I came in. This thing was raging. I think it was heading to World War III. And you're not going to have that anymore. That's the nice part. You're not going to have to worry about that. But we'll see what happens in terms of getting it settled. But this was heading to World War III. This is the worst thing that's happened in terms of war. These are the biggest numbers that we've had since World War II.
Mm-hmm. And we have a ton of time left, but I wanted to ask you about this. Qatar and Egypt say, we think we have a ceasefire with Hamas. The American people watch this over and over and over again. You had Witkoff there. You've been involved. Everybody's trying to get Hamas to give them. And what is it? We'll give them half the hostages. I think probably people have had enough of this, don't you?
Well, you saw my statement a few days ago.
I sure did.
So, first of all, they weren't going to give back any hostages. I'm the one that got all the hostages back. By the way, Steve Witkoff does a great job. It's, a very hard job, but I used him because he's a very wonderful person that everybody likes, and he's a good deal maker, and he's done a great job. But, these people also change their minds. So what happened is we worked hard. We got all these hostages back. I've had so many letters from parents and from the kids themselves and the people that got out. But I got them back, Mark. You wouldn't have even had any. You wouldn't have gotten any. And none of these people would have been back. But I got them back. Worked with your friend Bibi. He's a good man. He's in there fighting. He's fighting. You know, they're trying to put him in jail on top of everything else. How about that? He's nuts. He's a war hero. Because we work together. He's a war hero. I guess I am too. Yep. Nobody cares, but I am too. I mean, I sent those planes. 22 years, the pilots came. I rewarded them. I brought them all to the Oval Office, the people having to do with that whole operation, which was so perfect, which was a total just an obliteration. When CNN, they tried to say, well, maybe it wasn't as good as Trump said it was. It's just such bad people. It turned out that it was even more so than I said. It was obliteration. The Atomic Energy Commission said this place is gone. They can maybe start up, but they're not starting up there. These guys, and you know what that is? That's sort of a hurting of our pilots. But when you look at it, when you look at what we've done and the success that we've had, and they're putting Bibi through a lot. But as far as Hamas is concerned, I said 2 weeks ago, and I said it a long time ago, you won't, ultimately, you're going to have to fight like hell. Everyone's forgotten about October 7th. They don't like to think about October 7th. You have some people, I guess it's a soundbite, pretty much a Democrat soundbite. It's amazing that Democrats, like Schumer's a Palestinian. He's right now a Palestinian senator. We call him the Palestinian senator from New York City or New York, but I don't know. I think his career is probably over. I guess I see polls where he gets obliterated, just like we obliterated the nuclear weapons, the nuclear stockpile. That would have been, by the way, I think they would have had nuclear weapons in a period of 4 weeks.
Oh, you're right.
Hit them. I was going to say the pilots came to the Oval Office and they said, "Sir, our predecessors and us have been practicing this flight for 22 years." The same flight, right to the same place where they stored the stuff. They've been practicing it. You're the only president that had the guts to let us go do it. And if we didn't do it, they would probably by this time, just about this time, have a nuclear weapon. And they would have used it. You know that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. President, we're running out of time. I just want to tell you, this audience loves you. This audience backs you.
Well, we don't
give a damn what the media have to say. They're wrong about everything, and they're on the wrong side of history, too. So we want to wish you all the best in your dealings here. These are tough with Russia and Ukraine. Thank you for what you're doing with the border and the economy. Thank you for what you're doing really for Israel, quite frankly, and your support of the state of Israel. There's a lot of Israel hatred and anti-Semitism and all the rest of this stuff swirling around, and you stand there and you fight it. So God bless you, my friend, and you are my friend.
Yep, we are, but so do you fight it. Nobody like you. And you and Sean and a few people, it's not a huge group of people because it seems to be heading in the wrong direction in many ways. But in the end, we win. We win all the time. But I just want to thank you, too.
And the best of the First Lady. That was a beautiful letter. God bless you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
All right. What a man. Just fantastic. How many founding fathers can you name? I bet most Americans can't name more than 2 or 3. Folks, if we forget the founding our country's heritage, we risk losing our America as we know it. The Heritage Foundation needs your help, ensuring that the American founding and those who made it possible aren't forgotten. Their new resource, Why the American Founding Matters, explores why the American founding still matters in the 21st century and why it's so important that we study it. Without the unique principles that form the basis of our founding documents, the challenges of self-government, and the dedication of our founding fathers, America as we know it could never have existed. So go to heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/Levin. Get your copy of this important new essay from the Heritage Foundation, which includes a comprehensive timeline of the American founding from 1774 to 1800. There's too much at stake to not take action today, so please get your free copy at heritage.org/Levin today. That's heritage.org/Levin.
Nobody says it better than Mark Levin.
I'll go with what Mark Levin said, because nobody could say it better.
Call in now at 877-381-3811.
Donald Trump, fantastic man. And I don't do interviews like the journalists, pretend journalists who are mostly Democrats and leftists who have all the Democrat talking points and just hammer them and interrupt them and interrupt them and hammer them. I want to hear what he has to say. And if you listen carefully, you learn from him and what he's doing and how he approaches these issues and so forth and so on. It's absolutely fascinating. You learn a ton. You've never heard this from any other president. People, oh, we've heard this before. No, you haven't. He's explaining how he approaches things and so forth. He's talking up his record because if he doesn't, who will? And it's a remarkable record, and he's a remarkable person. Just listen to the way he talks. And certainly compare him to Biden. Biden, what a disaster. Or even Obama. Obama was full of crap. With all due respect to George W. Bush, he could barely complete sentences. Clinton was all... You know, Clinton and Newsom remind me of each other. Bill Clinton, they just do. Just full of crap, and you can hear it all the time. You know, spinning and shucking and jiving and all the rest of it. The thing about Trump, President Trump, when you listen to President Trump, the way he talks to you in this audience, the way he talks to me, is the way he talks to Putin, is the way he talks to Zelensky. He's very honest and straightforward. You know, you got to do this, you know, you got to do that. And all they do is trash the guy. The left trashes him, the Democrats trash him, and fake MAGA trash him too. And I don't know how he does it. Wakes up every morning, he's fully engaged, he takes on every big subject, and on top of that, he's refurbishing the White House and raising $200 million in private funds and his own funds to build a ballroom, or really a bigger center, so they can have meetings in there and events in there without constantly putting tents up on the South Lawn. Nobody wanted to take that on. He takes it on. And when you meet him in person, he walks around the White House, the West Wing, and shows you these portraits that he had pulled out of the basement that were in storage, had to dust them off, clean them up. He has the portrait, I think, of every president up there. He moved Obama where it belongs, where nobody could really see it. You could see it, but it's not a regularly trafficked area. But he brought out the greats and put them out. And then he'll point to each president and he'll start giving you the history of each one and talking about each one. Now, it reminds me, you know, Reagan, they used to attack him as being dumb and so forth and so on. Reagan read all the great philosophers. He knew all about the founders and so forth and so on. You talk to Trump, he'll tell you about architecture and architects and the history of this and the history of that. It's quite remarkable. It's quite remarkable. And when you think about what he's done, securing the border, he's taken on the crime in Washington, D.C. They have a whole city council. They have a mayor. They have a police force that's supposed to take it on, but they're not properly led. So he says, okay, I got to deal with this. The border. He said, I can shut down the border. Shuts it down. How many years did we complain about the border and were we lied to? First it was secure, and then we needed bipartisan legislation. Man comes in and shuts the damn thing down. And he's looking at this Russian-Ukraine situation. I don't know about you folks, but after hearing him speak, I feel pretty confident. In other words, if they can't get a good deal in which Ukraine accepts it, in which many of these European countries accept a security role, a significant security role, then he's not going to do it. Because the bottom line is they all have to agree. Russia, Ukraine, and these what? About a dozen of these European countries. Now, here's what I want to say to you about that. Myself, who doesn't trust Putin and considers him a monster, if you listen to President Trump, he says, look, we get along, I speak to him, I know. He never says he's a good guy. Ever. He never says he's a good guy. What he doesn't say are things that a president probably shouldn't say because he's trying to make this arrangement. Now, what happens if this arrangement is actually agreed to? Well, we don't know all the particulars, okay? So we have to read some of the fig leaves, some of the reporting that's going out. And I was not going to be so obnoxious and absurd as to ask for specifics. He can't give them. This is a negotiation. And by the way, there was no pre-discussion in advance, what I could ask, what I couldn't, nothing, zero. I get guests who come on here who aren't even elected. What's the subject? He didn't want to know that they didn't even ask the subject. But it was pretty obvious. So in any event, what he's saying is, look, if there's a security agreement in place that Zelensky can live with, that the Europeans can live with, we will continue to sell arms to the Europeans for them and to provide to the Ukrainians. He said on Fox and Friends this morning, perhaps we'll provide air power, that sort of thing, to kind of back them up. Absolutely no troops on the ground. And if that's the position, that's a pretty strong arrangement, don't you think, Mr. Producer? Now, if I'm Ukraine, I don't want to give up anything either. And if I'm Zelensky, I negotiate as hard as I can not to give up anything. But he's not going to get Crimea back. It's not going to happen. Obama lost that. Georgia's not going to get 20-25% of Georgia back. George W. Bush lost that. The invasion into eastern Ukraine, that actually occurred on kind of Clinton's watch, and really kind of early on George H.W. Bush's watch. And so Trump is dealing with all this now. Obviously, the big, massive invasion in 2022, February in 2022, that's Biden. So when you look at all of his predecessors, when you look at Biden, Obama, George W. Bush, Clinton, George Bush 41, all this stuff took place under them. And George Bush 41, it's not that he was directly involved in all this, but the groundwork was laid like for the 1994 Budapest Agreement, in which the Ukrainians gave all their missiles, all their nuclear missiles and launching systems to Russia in exchange for security. That began in 1992 and was signed off by Clinton in 1994. This is why Trump's saying, hey, excuse me, this is all presented to me. And I'm trying to find a way to put an end to it. And just notice how he's doing it. He is prodding. He's relatively flexible. But he knows what Putin is. We all know what Putin is. Trump's the one that keeps saying, look at all the casualties. They're unbelievable what's taking place. And remember when he got pissed off about a month ago or 3 weeks ago? He warned Putin about tariffs on India and China, which would choke off their oil sales, choke off their liquidity. And he warned him about a second tier of tariffs. He warned them. And the banks. He could today, if he wanted to, literally destroy Russia's economy, the way Reagan destroyed the Soviet Union's economy. He could do that. And that's the card he holds. That's the card he holds. I'll tell you something else I liked in their meeting with Zelensky. The public portion of it. I was not, like so many of you, but not all of you, I wasn't happy with that public fighting, mostly with J.D. Vance and Zelensky. I didn't like it. It's not a matter of whether Zelensky didn't behave himself. That I just didn't like it. I thought it showed exactly the wrong thing to Putin. It's not something I liked. Look how different this one is. Look how different it is. So the president is driving all of this. All of it. And he's right about this. If he were a Democrat and all that he's accomplished, they'd already be giving him a ticker tape parade. Ticker tape parade. Whether it's D.C. trying to stop the crime against the people who live in D.C., who are mostly black, mostly Democrat, and he's saying we got to try and do something about this, and I'm going to do something about it. If he were a Democrat, ticker tape parade. All these other deals that he's cut internationally, ticker tape parade. Ticker tape parade. It's just, you're watching a historic figure, an iconic figure. And you're also watching the lowest of the media, the lowest of the Democrat Party, the lowest of the left. That's what's going on. I don't think I trust anybody else with this Russia-Ukraine thing. I really don't. Because Donald Trump is not himself going to give away chunks of Ukraine. Ukraine will decide, along with its European partners and the assistance of the United States, what it can and cannot live with. And in the end, if it can't live with any of it, then it doesn't have to. There's going to be a war that continues. Putin is a monster. He's a genocidal maniac. Nobody knows that better than Ukraine. Nobody knows that better than the Europeans. Because they're on the chopping block. So, and here's Trump, who's pushing for a Zelensky-Putin meeting. So there's a lot that has to happen for any kind of deal to be signed. First, those guys have to meet. Then there has to be more meetings beyond that. That sort of thing. And so nothing's going to be a surprise, I don't believe. And I believe it's something that all of us will be able to get behind. Look, it hasn't presented itself yet. I'm an honest shooter. I shoot straight. I shoot as I see fit. If I think the Russians are getting the upper hand and Europe is stupid and Ukraine is stupid, I'll tell you. But that would mean Zelensky's stupid. That would mean the Europeans are stupid. That would mean the White House is. I just find that hard to believe. And for all the Democrats in their media trashing President Trump, he didn't say a damn thing when Obama surrendered Crimea. Nothing. He didn't say a damn thing when Biden effectively told Putin, if you take a little bit of territory, it's okay. He didn't say a damn thing about that. Or when 20% or so of Georgia was taken in about 48 hours. None of those presidents who were involved, and maybe they couldn't do anything, but none of them got the scorn that the media throw on Trump, and none of that happened under Trump. None of it. Zero. And I was the first one to post the fact that these presidents were involved, and this was bipartisan. No land was taken when Trump was president. Now, you might say, well, they've made advances since. Yes, and he's trying to bring an end to it. But I don't remember any of his predecessors taking effective steps to bring an end to anything. Anyway, I found that fascinating. I find him fascinating. You heard what he said about Hamas. He said, look what I posted the other day, and look what I posted 2 weeks ago. And what did he post? He said, you got to destroy them as fast as you can. This latest proposal with the Qataris, remember, Qatar is a terrorist state led by terrorists, who fund the pro-terrorist movements within our country. Others do too, but they're the primary funder of it all. They're the banker for terrorism. And they funded Hamas. And they also took care of the ringleader of 9/11. They gave him a safe haven. Tell me, how is it that country's a mediator? How is that even possible? They say, we have a deal here like Witkoff had negotiated. Netanyahu, Trump, they're all saying, yeah, okay, great. And what was it? Oh, we'll release 10 living hostages. You give us 1,000 more prisoners. And it goes on and on and on. Why? Because Netanyahu's about to wipe them out. And Trump thinks they need to be wiped out. Enough is enough. More when I return. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, we're less than a year from the 250th birthday of our great nation. But sadly, far too many have forgotten what this country stands for. Why? Because they forgot or were never even taught how this country was founded, why it was founded, and who founded it. If we lose our heritage, we lose America. That's why the Heritage Foundation needs your help. They've created a resource not just to ensure that patriots like you don't forget about the American founding, but to equip Americans with the facts they've never learned in school. This resource, Why the American Founding Matters explores the question of why it's so important to study the American founding and why the founding still matters today. Folks, don't wait. Get your free copy of this essay today at heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/Levin. Now, included in this resource is a comprehensive timeline of the American founding from 1774 to 1800. You need to read it, folks, and so does everyone you know. So go to heritage.org/Levin now. That's heritage.org/Levin. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation. That was the first major radio interview of any kind, I think, the president had since his meeting with Putin and his meeting with Zelensky and the Europeans. And it's just remarkable what's happened so quickly. He sees his opportunity, he sees a gap, and he runs for the gap. With opportunities and so forth, he sees his opportunities. You can see how he became such an incredibly successful businessman and helped build the skyline of New York City. A very successful media kingpin, if you will, with his program. You can see. This is why when people say to me, how did you get to where you are? When that door opens, walk through it. In other words, when opportunity knocks, don't ignore it. You can't sit down and just say, oh, woe was me, woe was me. The door opens, go through it. All of us get opportunities. Some of us know it, some of us don't. It doesn't mean hard work doesn't create success. Hard work creates opportunity. If you're lamenting and you're kind of stuck, when that door opens, you walk through it. Even if you think, oh, geez, I'm better than this. One thing leads to another. One thing leads to another. If you don't do the one thing, then it leads to nothing. That's another example you can see with the president. It's really quite remarkable. He had these world leaders in this country within 48 hours. Zelensky here within 48 hours. And he meets with them. And it's not just, sugar cookies and a cup of coffee. The guy is advancing his agenda. And they came with an agenda, which is what he wants. And they want to see what's possible. In the end, maybe nothing's possible. But if something's possible, he's going to do it. Who else can do this? Can you think of anybody else? I can't. I can't think of anybody else. It's historic. Remember, this is just the beginning. This is a long process. It won't be as long as it normally might be, but it's a long process. It's a process. And the media will attack him every step of the way. I don't mean have legitimate questions on policy. I mean attack him, try and sabotage him. We'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. I want to give you an idea of how our media are so corrupt, so left-wing, how they really want to sabotage our country. Susan Rice was on MSLSD yesterday, and they don't even call it that anymore. It's MS Now. It should be called BS Now, don't you think, Mr. Producer? But anyway, there it is. In fact, that'll be the name I give it from now on, BS Now. And she talks about the Trump-Putin summit. We don't really know what happened there, as I commented on Sunday. But let's listen to this. You heard the president about an hour ago. We're going to release that audio, the recording of it shortly, and post it for you. And but I want you to listen to Susan Rice, who's a disaster, who's up to her eyeballs in Obamagate. That is the Russia collusion phony story. She went on TV and lied on 5 different networks about Benghazi. You remember her. She's a radical kook. She's a political bomb thrower. And so, of course, BS Now, that's one of the great guests that they figure they have to have. Cut 4, go.
Trump quickly ascertained that he wasn't going to get a ceasefire out of Putin. And Trump always likes to put a positive spin on his own work and even a dishonest spin in some instances, frequently. And so I think that, he had said for weeks, if not months, that a ceasefire immediately was necessary and that was what he sought in Alaska. And if he didn't get it, he was going to be very angry and there were going to be severe consequences. And he melted in like a puddle of ice in the Alaska sunshine.
All right, hold on a second. He melted like a puddle of ice. Have you ever seen a puddle of ice, Mr. Producer? Ice can melt into a puddle, right? But I've never heard of a puddle of ice. Now, maybe that's her brain she's trying to describe. But Trump is flexible. It's not disingenuous. It's not a failure. He saw an opportunity for a bigger deal. That's what he did. So rather than fight over a ceasefire, and that's the ploy all the time, he says, all right, let's go for the whole enchilada. And he contacts, after speaking to Putin, he contacts Zelensky. Have you heard Zelensky complain at this point? Early on, he was concerned about it. He hasn't complained since. The European countries haven't complained since. The only one complaining are the Democrats. The Democrats who do nothing. Nothing. Except create havoc, create anarchy, create chaos. They do nothing. Nothing good. I think it was Trump or one of his spokespeople who said, if he walked out of there with a deal that Russia would surrender Moscow to NATO, they complain about that. But her hero, Obama, Crimea was lost under him. And he didn't say a damn thing. He didn't say a damn thing. Go ahead, please.
I don't know if Putin just refused or if he manipulated him in some way.
So why are you a guest? You don't actually know anything. You're a guest because you're a hater. You're a guest because you're evil. You're a guest because you're on the attack. You have a title. You had one under Biden like you had one under Obama. Your reputation is thoroughly in shreds, except with the media and the Democrats. Doesn't matter what you're doing, how wrong you've been throughout your life. But she's sure that whatever Trump did, he cowered. He ducked. He flinched. And there he is. Meeting with Zelensky and all these heads of the European countries, talking about a security, a border potentially, if it involves territory. Wouldn't it be great if I could bring Susan Rice back and question her about what she said on BS Now? Go ahead.
Trump, as some people say, responds to the last person he spoke to. I don't know.
How is this contributing any knowledge to anybody or anything? It's not. It's poison. I'll prove it to you. She goes on. Cut 5, Mr. Producer. Go.
It's been clearly and repeatedly established, including by the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee led by Marco Rubio, that Russia interfered in the 2016 election by disinformation campaigns, by social media efforts, by all sorts of means.
So ignore all the evidence, the firsthand hard evidence that has been with the government, including during the Biden regime. Nobody said that the Russians didn't attempt to interfere with the election. Nobody has said that. Tulsi Gabbard hasn't said that. Nobody. What they're saying is Russia's interference had no impact and that Russia did not interfere on behalf of Trump. See, those are the two lies. Number one, that the interference had an impact on the election and elected Donald Trump, and number two, that the interference was done on behalf of Donald Trump and he was colluding with the Russians. It's all a lie, an absolute lie. But again, she's on BS Now, a.k.a. MSLSD, and this is the best she's got. But this is how they pick their guests. Little propagandists. Go ahead.
Actual vote. And that's just a fact. Now, obviously, Donald Trump doesn't like that fact. He doesn't like the fact that the intelligence community and the Senate Bipartisan Intelligence Committee assessed that
the Senate Bipartisan Intelligence Committee didn't even have the information that was released. Did it? No, it didn't. The Senate Bipartisan Committee. It's also funny how she doesn't mention the House Intelligence Committee, which did a far better job than the Senate Bipartisan Committee, by the way. And part of the problem is, quote-unquote, bipartisan. A lot of the Republicans sell out to the Democrats. That said, her findings are wrong. Her statement of the findings are wrong. But let's say they're right. It's funny how she won't talk about the documentation that was released by Gabbard, and then Radcliffe, and then Patel, which is overwhelming. All of it. Funny, isn't it? And funny how she isn't pressed about her role. Man, do you know if I had 5 minutes questioning her, Mr. Producer, what that would look like? Go ahead.
Was intended to not only sow distrust in our democracy, but to benefit Donald Trump. But all of that...
That's a lie. It was not intended to benefit Donald Trump. An absolute lie. Look at today. Who do you think the Russians would want as president today? Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? Hillary Clinton. Go ahead.
In 2025, and Donald Trump professes to be committed to trying to bring peace to Ukraine in the wake of Russia's brutal, years-long invasion. And rather than put the sort of pressure...
Brutal, years-long invasion that happened under his predecessors and really happened under Biden, for whom you worked, for whom you were a senior advisor. You, Susan Rice, have your DNA all over this, blood all over your hands as a participant in this. You. This didn't happen under Donald Trump. It happened 3.5 years ago, February 2022, when you occupied the White House, when your regime occupied the White House. Biden, Harris, genius foreign policies, funding the Iranians as they're building nuclear weapons. Hamas, attacks again during their presidency, during their regime. They undermine Netanyahu. They undermine the state of Israel. They claim they kept giving arms to Zelensky. That's all well and good. But Trump's point is, Putin invaded on your watch because of what you showed in Afghanistan, because of the statements coming out of Biden's mouth. And this is what I mean. Trump's just getting started on this peace initiative. Look how far he's come. Friday, then over the weekend, today. And it's a process. It takes time. And yet look how fast this thing has moved. And I've been thinking about this. There can't be a bad deal. Not if Zelensky has to sign off and these European leaders have to sign off. They're not going to sign off on a bad deal. It might be a tough deal, but it's not going to be a bad deal. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
How many times have you told someone, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Now, that's great advice for most things, but not so much for a cell phone. See, over time, the battery life fades, the processor can't keep up, and it's fallen in the toilet perhaps one too many times. Fortunately, thanks to Pure Talk, your cell phone is something you can replace without feeling guilty. When you switch to Pure Talk this month, they're going to give you a Samsung Galaxy A36 for free with a $35 qualifying plan. Wow, just $35 a month for talk, text, and data, and a free Samsung phone. The screen scratch-resistant Gorilla Glass, and a battery that lasts all day. All on America's most dependable 5G network. Look, supporting companies like Pure Talk is a really good thing. You win by cutting your cell phone bill in half. They win by hiring more Americans and helping more veterans. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin to get your free phone today. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin. Switch to my wireless company, America's wireless company, Pure Talk. You know, ladies and gentlemen, something President Trump said at the very end there, which is drawing attention in Israel, among other places. He called Netanyahu a war hero, and he said, I guess I am too. And they are. And they are. And he also said, with respect to Hamas, he reiterated what he issued the other day, a statement he issued. He basically said that Hamas needs to be destroyed. It's the only way to get the hostages back, put an end to this. And he's right. He's right. That's exactly what we would do. Exactly what we would do. Now, we spent the vast majority of the interview talking about Russia and Ukraine for obvious reasons. And did he say anything you could disagree with? He didn't say a word that I could disagree with. Nothing. Now, you have 79%, give or take, of the people of Ukraine that have been polled. Again, I can't vouch for the polling company and all the rest of it. I'm just reporting to you. Who said they want some kind of peace over there now. Now, it's not peace at any cost. Because they know how vicious Putin is and his army is. They're killers. We've had POWs come back, and they've talked about the torture. They've talked about what they've seen happen to civilians. It's horrendous. It's grotesque. And that's why they fight to the end. And that's why they're prepared to fight to the end. Russia seems to be making some level of progress, but not progress to defeat Ukraine, but some level of progress. And of course, the problem with Putin and the problem with the Russians generally, and I speak as somebody with Russian ancestry, a lot of it, is that they throw soldiers into this stuff, knowing full well they're not going to survive, and they just keep doing it. And you might say, well, why don't the people rise up? Because this is an iron-fisted police state. This is why he keeps assassinating people. This is why they have tougher laws than they've ever had before in terms of speech. In terms of speech. This is exactly the kind of police state I write about in my book on power. Exactly the kind of police state. Where language is used to advance the cause of the state, thought control, backed up by force and coercion. Their goal is to have obedience and fanatics. That's it. The Democrat Party, obviously, are not involved in genocidal acts, but their mentality is a softer version of this, as I explained. When you back a guy, Mandani, who's a Marxist, Islamist, Jew hater, that's what I mean by negative power. And in America, there's soft negative power, not full-on negative power, because of the institutions built by the framers of the Constitution, and because of the belief system created by positive power that we embrace and promote. That's why it's soft negative power and not full-on negative power, where power is out of control, where power is exercised by the relative few over the many. So these are important lessons. You know, people say they're 7,000 miles away. Well, okay, but they're still important lessons. You know, the Bible is thousands of years old. So what? It tells us our history and teaches us our morality and our belief systems. Many of us Many of us. But was there anything that you thought you disagreed with that he said? There wasn't a thing that I disagree with that he said. I should mention this now, too, by the way. We had an unbelievable book event at the Reagan Library on Sunday. It was unbelievable. The place was filled to the rafters, an overflow crowd of just lovely, kind, beautiful patriots of all ages and all races. A tremendous gathering. And I signed books there for 4.5 hours. About 1,000 of them, give or take. We had a fantastic time there. The executive director, David, is fantastic. Melissa, senior vice president there. Our buddy John Highbush was there. I had family there. My wife, who stands by me and helps me every step of the way. And her mother is actually the biggest hit in the place. Where's your mother-in-law? Or to Julie, where's your mother? She's sitting right over there. The whole time, there she is. I'm a very lucky person. I really am. I'm very blessed. Especially with all of you folks. There have been strange and aggressive efforts. People wanted to come between you and me. They have failed utterly. Utterly. When you look at the book sales, when you look at the radio ratings, when you look at the TV ratings, and most of all, when you look at these events that we had, 3 fantastic events, there will be no more, but 3 fantastic events, and we had people at the Reagan Library. Just so patriotic, so kind, real Americans, great Americans. And my wife keeps track, as does our friend Melissa, of where they're from. She's the chief marketing officer. They flew, first of all, most of them were from California, don't get me wrong. But people flew in from Florida, Utah, Virginia, Minnesota, South Carolina, North Carolina, New Jersey, Washington State, Washington, D.C., Nevada, Louisiana, New York, Arizona, Alabama, Texas, Georgia, and members of our own family from Tennessee. You believe that, Mr. Producer? It's amazing. All over the country, every corner of the country. And unfortunately, it sold out in 36 hours. If the place had been 10 times the size, I think that would have happened too. And we had a wonderful event. Wonderful dinner. I think everybody left very happy. I know we did. I want to thank all of you. I'll be right back. How many times have you told someone, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Now, that's great advice for most things, but not so much for a cell phone. See, over time, the battery life fades, the processor can't keep up, and it's fallen in the toilet perhaps one too many times. Fortunately, thanks to Pure Talk, your cell phone is something you can replace without feeling guilty. When you switch to Pure Talk this month, they're going to give you a Samsung Galaxy A36 for free with a $35 qualifying plan. Wow, just $35 a month for talk, text, and data, and a free Samsung phone, the scratch-resistant Gorilla Glass, and a battery that lasts all day. All on America's most dependable 5G network. Look, supporting companies like Pure Talk is a really good thing. You win by cutting your cell phone bill in half. They win by hiring more Americans and helping more veterans. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin to get your free phone today. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin. Switch to my wireless company, America's wireless company, Pure Talk.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the interview with Donald Trump was his first on radio, exclusively, after his meetings with Zelensky and the European leaders. He's extremely busy, so we were very grateful to get him, very grateful to have him. And We are now posting that interview on all of our social platforms. We're also sharing it with certain media outlets, and they're free to take it off my platforms, or we'll also have it on our website as they wish. And you are too. Take it and share it. We do everything for free around here, all of our stuff online. And that's the way I want it, as open and on as many platforms as possible. So check it out and listen to it if you haven't, or listen to it again if you have. And ask me if there... I ask you, is there anything on there you disagree with? I don't think so. So he comes under all these attacks. What the hell for? What for? Shouldn't. That's like he has other things to do, but he looks around Washington, D.C., says, the place is becoming a pigsty under these Democrats. Crime is utterly and completely out of control. You have lunatics in the city council. You have a mayor who's an incompetent boob. Now we find out, it was always thought, but now we find out that the stats that they kept were phony. Look at this, there's less murders when there's not. Less hijackings when there's not. Less assaults when there's not. People aren't coming out at night, even in the nicest so-called areas around the baseball stadium where the Nationals play and lose. Restaurants have been built there. Townhomes, new office buildings. People are being assaulted and murdered. President sees this. What do you mean you can't walk around the Capitol building at night? What do you mean you can't walk around the White House at night? Ladies and gentlemen, when I was a kid, you could walk 80% of Washington, D.C. at night without fear of anything. And so rather than just reminisce about the good old days, Trump is saying, well, you know what, we're going to bring the good old days. Enough is enough. We're going to deal with this. And he's dealing with it. So what happens? He comes under attack. Just like securing the border and deporting criminals as well as those who shouldn't be here, period. He comes under attack. Here's Caroline Levitt, one of the great press secretaries, laying out the number of arrests that have occurred so far. What has it been, 10 days or so? Check this out. Cut 6, go.
And I will just reiterate, 465 total arrests and counting since the start of this operation. I believe 11 or 12 days ago, I'll have to check the calendar, but those are pretty remarkable results. If not for this task force and their high level of coordination and the leadership of this president, there would have been 465 more violent criminals on the streets of this capital that you all live in every day. So I think we should all be very grateful for that.
And they're not. And they're not. Again, this is a Democrat city, a heavily minority city. And here you have a Republican billionaire who says, you know what, that's enough already. It wasn't Obama who did anything about it. It wasn't Biden who did anything about it. It wasn't the Democrat Congress when they had it who did anything about it. Not Pelosi, not Schumer. It's Donald Trump. And, of course, he comes under attack by these Democrats, where he deserves enormous praise for what he's doing. Here's Greg Meeks of New York, big-time Democrat. And, like they throw around Holocaust and Nazis, they throw around slavery and Jim Crow. Is it that Jim Crow was so long ago that people don't remember what it is? Is that the problem? Or that the Holocaust isn't taught in school anymore? Is that the problem? What is the problem? These people are nuts. Cut 7, go.
This points towards Jim Crow 2.0 and everything that this man has done. And if you look at history...
Jim Crow 2.0. Donald Trump's trying to save lives and protect people in Washington, D.C. I believe a majority black city. And they compare that to Jim Crow 2.0? Seriously? How sick is this? Very sick. Because whether you're black, apparently, and a leftist, and Jewish and a leftist, you put your party ahead of your race and your faith. I've come to this conclusion. even if things are done that are intentionally, or I should say, specifically is a better word, specifically harms people in your race, or specifically harms people in your faith, they side with the party. The party. It's the Democrat part. That's the faith, as my wife says. Go ahead.
Jim Clyburn often talks about, and what took place post-Reconstruction, and see what's taking place right now, and what this man who is sitting in the White House is trying to do. He tells you that he believed the best president of the United States was Andrew Jackson, who came after Abraham Lincoln.
No, that's not what he says. This guy's a moron. He likes Andrew Jackson. And he doesn't know anything about Andrew Jackson. But he also likes Washington and Lincoln and Jefferson and Reagan. Who does Gregory Meeks think's the greatest president was? Franklin Roosevelt? You know what Franklin Roosevelt did for black people in this country? Did you read my book, The Democrat Party Hates America? I write these books for a reason. I write them, number one. I research them, number two. And I try to bring issues to your attention. You respond to people like this. You know what Franklin Roosevelt did for blacks in this country? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Zero. Worse than nothing. I told you in 1940, a bipartisan Congress sent him a bill outlawing nationwide lynching, and he wouldn't sign it. That's what he did. He did nothing. Zero. Joe Louis, the great boxer, who was a Democrat. He said, I'm not voting for him. After all these years, we finally get a bill from Congress to outlaw lynching. He said, I don't care what else he's done. He wouldn't sign that bill. Because he didn't want to lose certain voters in the South. Here's Trump fighting like hell to protect the people in Washington, D.C., the vast majority of whom are minorities, and the vast majority of the minority are black, almost 90-some% Democrat, and he compares him to Jim Crow 2.0? Isn't it Franklin Roosevelt who's Jim Crow 2.0? Don't you dare say that. No way. Then there's Van Hollen. Van Hollen, they've determined they can't even put him in the category of Caucasian. He's translucent. Now, this guy Van Hollen, in my humble opinion, is a big-time Jew hater, a big-time Israel hater. I understand it's in his family. But there he is. He wants you to know that what Trump is doing isn't an emergency. I am shocked that people in this medium of the media don't speak out louder and say, we support what Donald Trump's doing, who are minorities. I am shocked that we don't hear more. Well, maybe I shouldn't be so shocked. Democrats are Democrats. Cut 8, go.
Let's go back to the additional National Guard that is being sent in here, 750.
So this is Martha Raddatz, who had the Obamas at her wedding. Yes, she got married, I know. Nonetheless, why is she on TV? She's a hack. She's a Democrat hack. Let's go back to the additional National Guard that's being sent in here, 750 from Republican-led states. What's your reaction? What kind of question is that? The question, if you want to ask, is, why are Republicans sending National Guard to protect the Democrat city? Now they say, oh, they're taking over the city. Taking it over for what? For what? What's the end game in taking over Washington, D.C.? What do you get? Is there some gold in the ground? They have oil? Taking it over for what? The votes? They're so utterly contemptible and irrational. Go ahead.
What's your reaction to that?
Well, Martha, all of this is a total abuse of power. It's a manufactured
How
emergency.
is it an abuse of power? See, if you're a real journalist, excuse me, Senator, abuse of power how? What part of the Constitution, what federal law are you talking about? There's no abuse of power. There's no violation of law. It's an abuse of power. This same a-hole who went down to El Salvador and was swapping spit with an MS-13 gang member who'd beaten his wife not once but twice, according to her, and as we now know, was involved in trafficking illegal aliens. Because the Democrats and their party, their first reaction is to attack the society, to attack our country, to attack law enforcement. Go ahead.
To see an emergency in Washington, D.C.
Shut up, you idiot. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
How many times have you told someone, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Now, that's great advice for most things, but not so much for a cell phone. See, over time, the battery life fades, the processor can't keep up, and it's fallen in the toilet perhaps one too many times. Fortunately, thanks to Pure Talk, your cell phone is something you can replace without feeling guilty. When you switch to Pure Talk this month, they're going to give you a Samsung Galaxy A36 for free with a $35 qualifying plan. Wow, just $35 a month for talk, text, and data, and a free Samsung phone, the scratch-resistant Gorilla Glass, and a battery that lasts all day. All on America's most dependable 5G network. Look, supporting companies like Pure Talk is a really good thing. You win by cutting your cell phone bill in half. They win by hiring more Americans and helping more veterans. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin to get your free phone today. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin. Switch to my wireless company, America's wireless company, Pure Talk. You know, we're kicking some ass tonight, Mr. Producer. I'm loving this show. I hope you're enjoying it too, folks. Chris Murphy is a senator from Connecticut. Why is he on TV every single week? Why is he on TV? He looks like, who does he look like? You know, on the plane ride back from the Reagan Library, I was watching The Untouchables for the 10th time. He looks like that guy that plays Frank Nitti. Have you ever seen the movie, Mr. Producer? The guy with like really white, eggshell white skin, and he wears a white suit and a white hat and maybe a black tie. You know, he's a mobster. He's a brutal killer. Frank Nitti was a brutal killer. Now, of course, I'm not saying Chris Murphy is a brutal killer, but he looks like Frank Nitti. In a very unattractive Frank Nitti. And he has this black hair that looks like it's dyed. Chris Murphy has black hair that looks like it's dyed. But even worse than that, this guy is a slimeball. He's like an ambulance-chasing lawyer. Wherever there's an accident, there he is. Hey, here's my card. Do you need a lawyer? That's him. Or even worse, the guy on the corner in the raincoat. Hey, would you like some cigarettes? I have them right here. One of those guys. That's what he looks like. Says, "Oh, meet the depressed." Now, understand something. These Sunday news shows have no audiences. None. Because you're smart. The Sunday news magazine shows have no audiences. Hello, no audiences. But they don't care. They don't care. So here he is, Frank Nitti, a.k.a. Chris Murphy. Oh, meet the depressed. Cut 10, please, go.
What's happening here in Washington, D.C. is just a stunt. Donald Trump didn't like the fact that the walls were closing in on him.
So it's a stunt. This guy is a moron. His brain is made of, I don't know, applesauce. And there he is. He's just a stunt. The whole thing's a stunt. Life and death. It's a stunt. The whole thing's a stunt. I can't help it that there's people in the great state of Connecticut, the nutmeg state. And by the way, what's with the nutmeg state? Don't you think it's time to change that name too, Mr. Producer? The nutmeg state? Seriously? Seriously? That's the nickname of the state? What, did you have some cooking show? It's the nutmeg state. Oh, great. But even if you're going to choose a cooking ingredient, why would you pick nutmeg? Well, you have a nutmeg senator. Go ahead, please.
His own base was questioning why he wouldn't release the Epstein files, why he was protecting
the Epstein files. The Epstein files. The Epstein files. This is the party that defended Mr. Cigar, Mr. Clinton. They're worried about the Epstein files. Well, Bill Barr, former Attorney General, he went on TV, said there's nothing in the Epstein files that harms Donald Trump. Nothing. So they'll be chasing the Epstein files. The fake MAGA will be facing the Epstein files. The latest poll shows there's not even 1% of the people polled who thinks this is the top issue in the country. But Chris Murphy thinks it is. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877... What the hell is it? 381-3811. I know it. 877-381-3811. So now, this is how it works, America. The Smithsonian, unfortunately, just like so much of the rest of the culture, has been devoured by the hard left. They take over these management positions, they take over the boards, and then they impose their ideology. And many of these museums around the country, and especially in the Washington, D.C. area, have reflected the left's ideology. 1619 Project, CRT, DEI, ESG, and they emphasize negative aspects of American history. Now, you and I, we understand there's negative aspects of American history. We don't shy from it. We engage in it. We discuss it. I wrote a whole book on it since so much of it happened under Democrats. But we talk about these things. The problem is what you find in a lot of these museums is it's like 80-20 or 90-10, all the imperfections and the negativity about our history. You want people to embrace our country, embrace our history, to embrace the fact that we can correct ourselves. We're one of the few societies that do, short of war. We actually had a war to correct one of the worst of the worst, which was slavery. It's taught all the time. What's not taught are the individual battles, how many people lost their lives to fight and do the right thing against people who opposed it. But all you hear is the history of America through the lens of something very, very negative. You can't have people embracing our country, saluting our flag, fighting for our country who hate it. And yet many of these museums are now of that ilk. People, I haven't been there lately, people have told me at Monticello, when you go to Jefferson's home, it's horrendous what they've done there. Horrendous. What they've done to his legacy. So why should they have control over these institutions? Why should they control the narrative the way they do? So as we've talked about here in my book On Power, as I discussed on Fox on Saturday night in specific, Donald Trump goes into the culture. He goes into society. It's not just surface level with politics, which is important enough to vote and so forth. But he takes on the Marxists where they are. At the universities and colleges, in the law firms, in the bureaucracy, in the media, and here in our museums. Excuse me. The Smithsonian Museum used to be utterly non-controversial. Sure, you'd learn about slavery, and you'd learn about the Civil War to end slavery. You'd learn the good, the bad, and the ugly. But here you learn about the bad and the ugly over and over and over and over again. So Trump said, I've had enough of this. And so he's not saying candy coat everything. He's saying there needs to be a true edification, elucidation, explanation of American history. Well, you can't do that, man. So here's the headline CNN puts on this. Trump escalates attacks against Smithsonian museums, says there's too much focus on how bad slavery was. And so you're going to have people tomorrow who are going to spend their entire shows on the left talking about how bad slavery was, that it was too bad. We shouldn't emphasize that. No, I think we can emphasize that in context. Who was behind it? Which party defended it? Which party came to birth to fight it? But none of that's going to be in there. So this is how they write it. President Donald Trump escalated his campaign to purge cultural institutions of materials that conflict with his political directives on Tuesday, alleging museums were too focused on highlighting negative aspects of American history, including, quote, how bad slavery was. That's a single sentence at the top. A single sentence at the top. His political directives. These are not political directives. He wants cultural honesty and objectivity. In a True Social post, Trump directed his attorneys to conduct a review of museums, comparing the effort to his crackdown on universities across the country. Well, if that's the case, that's wonderful, because those universities are pushing racism, Islamism, anti-Semitism, and Marxism. We're not going to survive it if somebody doesn't do something about it. And so what Trump is doing is he's doing something about it. This poison, this cancer. These are publicly funded museums. These are colleges and universities that receive hundreds and hundreds of billions in taxpayer monies. He wrote, the Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been, nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. Now let's break that down. The Smithsonian's out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and so forth. Let's pick that up, how bad slavery was, very bad. And he's saying everything discussed is how horrible our country was. Slavery was very bad. And it took a civil war to end it. A civil war to end it. The vast majority of Americans, indeed the vast majority of Southerners, never owned slaves. That doesn't make it good. It's horrendous. But notice the Smithsonian, and notice this CNN piece by Kit Marr, Piper, whatever, I can't even pronounce these names. Notice they won't say which political party advanced the cause of slavery. Notice they'll say it was a state matter, but it was also a federal matter. Fugitive slave laws were passed by the federal Congress and upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. 2 of them were passed, as I wrote in my books. What ended slavery, the beginning of the ending of slavery, just like the beginning of the civil rights movement, came out of churches. It didn't come out of government, any government. The American people rose up. That's the wonderful story. And you want to know? You go to any one of these battlefields, and most people have never gone to one. You will see the men who died, hundreds of thousands of them, to both keep the Union and to end slavery. Men who never owned slaves. I want you to think about that. And you won't get the true history that even during the Second Continental Congress, where the Declaration of Independence was adopted, there were fights over slavery. Jefferson, who owned slaves, put language in there against slavery. It was removed at the direction of Georgia and South Carolina. These guys were in the middle of a revolutionary war. They couldn't work these things out right there and then. Slavery. Do you know there's slavery today in our own country? Slavery today in our own country. Again, many respects due to Democrat Party policies. Women sold into sex slavery by the tens of thousands with open borders. Nobody talks about that. Mostly women of color. Mostly Hispanic women. Other than me, who talks about this? Every week. What about that slavery? We don't even talk. Is that in the Smithsonian? Of course not. Now, this isn't in any respect reduce the horror of slavery that took place in the last century and a half. That's not my point at all. There's slavery going on today in Africa, where Islamists are butchering and taking as slaves black Christians in at least a dozen African countries. Who talks about that other than me? Nobody. Does Charlemagne the God talk about it? I don't know what the hell he talks about, but I doubt it. Does Al Sharpton, our great civil rights leader, does he talk about it? How about Mandami, who comes out of Uganda? Does he talk about it? No, I talk about it. How about slavery in Asia? By the communist Chinese. 2.5 million Uyghurs. Muslims. Anybody talk about that other than me? Nobody. 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 I'm more than happy to talk about slavery, the history of slavery, slavery in our country, slavery around the world. It needs to be talked about, all of it. That's not Trump's point. Trump's point is to focus on these issues, and it's not just slavery, just all these negative issues, and mostly not about the greatness of our country, is not our history. It's propaganda. The manner in which it's discussed, or the context, not of slavery, but the context of all the negative that's in the museum, without all the greatness of America in the museum. And this is how they destroy our culture altogether. Now they talk about this. Trump's comments come days after the White House announced an unprecedented sweeping review of the Smithsonian Institution, which runs the nation's major public museums. No, we should keep handing it over to the leftists who secrete themselves into the bureaucracy. The initiative, a trio of Trump top aides wrote in a letter to Smithsonian Institution Secretary Lonnie Bunch III, said aims to ensure alignment with the president's directive to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive or partisan narratives, and restore confidence in our shared cultural institutions. Nothing radical about that. The letter said the review would focus on public-facing content, the curatorial process to understand how work is selected for exhibits, current and future exhibition planning, the use of existing materials and collections, and guidelines for narrative studies. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Nothing. Bunch, who has served as Secretary of the Smithsonian since 2019 and is the first African-American to hold the position, has made multiple comments about the importance of educating people about slavery through the National Museum of African-American History and Culture specifically. He told Smithsonian Magazine that part of the purpose of that museum was to help a nation understand itself, an impossible task without the full recognition of the horrors of slavery. I seriously doubt the horrors of slavery are missing from most of these museums. You can go to any of the battlefields of the Civil War. The horrors of slavery are front and center. Excuse me. Front and center. So this isn't an argument over the horrors of slavery. This is an argument over the effort to show America as a horror. That's the argument. But Trump's asking to look at it, and he's not even allowed to do that, you see. Because he's pushing against the radical left and the culture. That's what he's doing. There should be exhibitions about slavery. There should be exhibitions about the abolitionists. There should be exhibitions about the Democrat Party that supported slavery and eugenics and opposed to eliminating. If I walked into that museum today, do you think I'd see anything about the role of the Democrat Party in slavery? Does anybody think I would? Do you, Mr. Producer? Do you think we'd see the voting tallies of the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act, where the overwhelming majority of Republicans voted for both statutes and a bare minimum of Democrats voted for them? You think they'd show the tally on the wall there so we could see who's responsible for what? Do you? Do you think they would have the fact that FDR refused to sign? So he pocket vetoed a federal anti-lynching law. You think we'd hear about any of that? Do you think we'd hear about Woodrow Wilson and eugenics? Do you think we'd hear about any of that? No. So they don't want a full history, do they? No. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Joy Reid, remember her? Joy Reid. Wasn't she removed? She's not on BS now, is she, Mr. Producer? I don't remember. She's not on anymore? She's gone? Wow. She's so horribly missed. And yet there she is with her big fat mouth. Yesterday, cut 15, go.
They can't fix the history they did. Their ancestors made this country into a slave hell. But they can clean it up now because they got the Smithsonian. They can get rid of it.
Let's stop right there. I'm sick and tired of this, too. That's not the whole history of slavery. The ending of slavery is part of the history of slavery, too. When a nation rose up and had a civil war to end slavery, can you name another country that had a civil war, almost destroyed itself over slavery? There's not another one in world history. In mankind's history, not another. And the man who led that civil war for the Union was Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln did more for black people than Joy Reid has ever done for anybody. And he would cite the Declaration of Independence. He made tremendous speeches. You should read them. Joy Reid probably hasn't read one, not even the Gettysburg Address. She's such a hater and a liar. And Lincoln made the point time and time again that the men who wrote that Declaration of Independence and the men who wrote that Constitution, they knew full well that slavery couldn't stand forever. And they knew that they had to leave it to their progeny, their children, to fix it. Because in founding a nation, they couldn't address all the issues in every single colony, or they wouldn't have had a nation. Certain numbers of these southern states would never become part of the United States. They would have become their own country, where slavery would have gone on longer, as Lincoln pointed out. And the vast majority of people who fought that war, the Civil War, if she wants to know the truth, were white people, because that was the vast majority of the people in the country. Obviously, blacks fought as well. But the fact of the matter is that slavery was defeated by a civil war, American fighting American.
It's your daily adult dosage of the Constitution. The Mark Levin Show. Call in now at 877-381-3811.
Joy Reid wants to teach some black history, but she's a liar. She doesn't want to teach black history. About 20 years after Roosevelt's death, as I write on page 51 of The Democrat Party Hates America, this is a killer book, by the way. And less than 60 years ago, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which essentially outlawed Jim Crow segregation and discrimination based on race, color, sex, religion, and national origin. And I was wrong. It's worse. Was opposed by 69% of Senate Democrats. Opposed by 69% of Senate Democrats. Supported by 82% of Senate Republicans. Was opposed by 61% of House Democrats. It was supported by 80% of House Republicans. Got that? Of those who voted no in the House, 74% were Democrats. Of those who voted no in the Senate, 78% were Democrats. It's important to remember these things. Now, they say Barry Goldwater, who opposed these laws on federalism grounds, obviously he was a racist. He wasn't really arguing on federalist grounds, now was he? The opposition among elected Republicans to the 64 Civil Rights Act was small and insignificant. And those Republicans who opposed it, including Senator Barry Goldwater, mostly did so not for racist beliefs, but reasons related to federalism, that is, the sorting out of which level of government had the authority to act. Obviously, they were wrong. That said, Goldwater supported the 1957 and 1960 Civil Rights Acts. Even Wikipedia, whose co-founder says it is now propaganda for the left-leaning establishment, acknowledged the following about Barry Goldwater. Quote, Barry Goldwater was fundamentally a staunch supporter of racial equality. Goldwater integrated his family's business upon taking over control in the 1930s. A lifetime member of the NAACP, Goldwater helped found the group's Arizona chapter. Goldwater saw to it that the Arizona Air National Guard was racially integrated from its inception in 1946, 2 years before President Truman ordered the military as a whole to be integrated, a process that was not completed until 1954. Goldwater worked with Phoenix civil rights leaders to successfully integrate public schools a year prior to the Brown versus Board of Education decision. Wikipedia continues praising Goldwater, quote, Goldwater was an early member and largely unrecognized supporter of the National Urban League Phoenix chapter, going so far as to cover the group's early operating deficits with his personal funds. Though the NAACP denounced Goldwater in the harshest of terms when he ran for president, the Urban League conferred on Goldwater the 1991 Humanitarian Award for, quote, 50 years of loyal service to the Phoenix Urban League. In response to the League members who objected, citing Goldwater's vote on the Civil Rights Act in 1964, the Urban League president pointed out that Goldwater had saved the League more than once, saying he preferred to judge a person on the basis of his daily actions rather than on his voting record. It's noteworthy that the Civil Rights Acts of 1875, 1857, 1960, 1964, and 1965 were overwhelmingly supported by Republicans. In 1982, it was Reagan who signed a 25-year extension of the Voting Rights Act, the longest extension by far at that time. And in 1983, it was Reagan who signed into law the designation of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday as a national holiday. As for Lyndon Johnson, the truth is that he had less of an epiphany than a slap of political reality, realizing that most of the nation had already rejected the Southern Democrat segregationists, and it was in his political interest to do so as well. And the Democrat Party's institutional racism extended well into the 1970s. President Joe Biden, who Joy Reid supported, President Joe Biden, who many blacks who come on this show and announce from their own platforms that they backed Biden over Trump as they did Harris over Trump. Do they know what they were backing? Biden in the early to mid-70s as a senator had a close relationship with several of the Senate's most notorious racists and segregationists, about which he brags to this day, including Mississippi Senator James Eastland, who fought hard against the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65. Biden worked closely with Eastland, among others, to thwart public school integration. 1977, he declared, unless there is orderly integration, I'm quoting, my children are going to grow up in a jungle, the jungle being a racial jungle. Now, you heard that during the election, thanks to me. I put it in the book. When campaigning in the South for Democrat Party presidential nominees several decades ago, Biden often touted the praise he received from Alabama Democratic Governor George Wallace, another leading racist segregationist, as, quote, one of the outstanding young politicians of America. Biden knew who and what he was dealing with, yet he was comfortable embracing it. Moreover, Biden had a long history of racist and stereotypical remarks about blacks and other minorities, which he openly and repeatedly voiced to this day. Now, in 2022, he chose Ketanji Brown Jackson for the Supreme Court. And Biden said, for too long, our government, our courts, have not looked like America. And I believe it's time that we have a court that reflects the full talents and greatness of our nation, with a nominee of extraordinary qualifications, and that we inspire all young people to believe that they can one day serve their country at the highest level. Is that where it ends? No. But Biden did not feel that way in 2003, when President George W. Bush nominated Judge Janice Rogers Brown, a black woman, to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. Our friend Mark Thiessen at Fox, he wrote in the Washington Post the following, quote, Biden wants credit for nominating the first black woman to the Supreme Court. But here's the shameful irony. As a senator, he warned President Bush that if he nominated the first black woman to serve in the Supreme Court, I'm quoting, he would filibuster and kill her nomination. Now, Judge Brown is the granddaughter, she's on the court today, the circuit court, is the granddaughter of sharecroppers. Grew up in rural Alabama during the dark days of segregation, when her family refused to enter restaurants or theaters with separate entrances for black customers. She rose from poverty, put herself through college and UCLA Law School as a working single mother. She was a self-made African-American legal star, but she was an outspoken conservative. So Biden set out to destroy her. Thiessen points out that what Biden threatened was unprecedented. There's never been a successful filibuster of a nominee for associate justice in the history of the Republic. Biden wanted to make a black woman the first in history to have her nomination killed by filibuster. And Biden fought like a rabid dog to block Brown's nomination, though she was confirmed later, because he knew Brown would be in line to become the first black woman on the Supreme Court. And he didn't want such a historic appointment conferred on a Republican, and he didn't want the Republican Party to receive credit for making it. Does Joy Brown want this history and the Smithsonian? Ladies and gentlemen, shouldn't this book be in the Smithsonian? The Democrat Party hates America? These are facts. This is history with specific citations. The history that they have squelched, that they've hidden, that they've smothered with a pillow. It's not in every instance, but it's in most instances. When you're talking about slavery or racism or Jim Crow or the rest, it's one party with some elements of the Republican Party, but never the vast majority of the Republican Party. But racism is the history of the Republican Party. Anti-Semitism is racism is the history of the Democrat Party. Anti-Semitism is the history of the Democrat Party. It's the truth. It's the truth. Now let's listen to Joy read from the top, Mr. Producer. Cut 15, go.
They can't fix the history they did. Their ancestors made this country into a slave hell. But they can clean it up now because they got the Smithsonian. They can get rid of all the slavery stuff. They got PragerU. They can lie about the history to the children. They can't.
You're disgusting to me. You are disgusting to me. Nobody's lying about slavery in this country. The lie is the political party, and it wasn't just a political party, but the political party that fought a civil war to defend it. And then after the Civil War was lost, that promoted what became the Ku Klux Klan. Another Republican president, Ulysses S. Grant, who despised slavery and racism, sent the United States Army into the South to destroy the Klan. And did a great job of it until the Democrats took the House of Representatives when he was president. And they cut off all the funding for the Army to take out the Klan. I am more than prepared to go toe-to-toe with anybody on this. And I bet you Joy Reid's a Democrat. Well, we're not that way anymore. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. With a political party with that kind of history, how could you be a member of it? That's the history. That's the history. She's attacking Prager University. Has anybody heard Dennis Prager on the radio lately, Mr. Producer? No. Does anybody care what's happened to Dennis Prager? Dennis Prager has had a near-fatal accident. He can't speak behind a microphone right now. Maybe never. Dennis Prager is a great man. He studied to be a rabbi. What makes him great is his ability to communicate about America's morality and values and belief systems. But he can't communicate right now. See, Joy Reid, it's not all about skin color. It's about what's in your heart and soul. You have no heart and soul. You're a vile, evil person. And don't give a damn what color you are or what your genitalia is. You couldn't even make it at MSNBC. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Well, folks, I hope you'll grab your copy of On Power. I haven't discussed it much tonight. It's here at Amazon.com. Friends of mine whose Costco's carry the book. They have wonderful supply of them, but they're selling out quickly, it turns out. Of course, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Sam's Club, BJ's, you name it. It's out there, and of course, Amazon.com. But those of you who've jumped in, I want to thank you. Those of you who have read it and have left comments on Amazon.com, there's some obviously real stinkers out there, but you understand what I mean. I want to thank you so much. I think it's a very, very important book. It's the most important book I've written in my own assessment. And when I discuss it at length, as I did at the Reagan Library, people really appreciate it. And when they read it, they're really instilled by it. This book has had more dog ears and underlines of phrases and words from people I've heard from than any other book I've ever written, including Liberty and Tyranny. So I want to thank you for that. Trucker Gary. We met a lot of truckers at the Reagan Library. It was wonderful. Cascade, Wisconsin, XM Satellite. Gary, how are you, sir?
I am great, Mark. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, my God. You know what? I look forward to listening to you every day. Every day.
And you're a trucker, right?
I'm a trucker.
Yeah.
I'm in Indiana, heading back to Wisconsin. And I just wanted to tell you, thank you. My On Power book just came in the mailbox today. My wife told me.
Wonderful.
And I just want to say you are the utmost patriot of... Oh, man. I can't even explain it.
You're wonderful.
I can't.
You're wonderful.
Even explain it.
Well, Gary, don't hang up, Mr. Producer. Let's get Gary's full name and address, and get him a signed copy, if we can, of On Power. And Gary, you can share the other copy with another trucker or somebody in your family. So don't hang up. Don't hang up. Let's grab that, Mr. Producer. Thank you so much. All right. Isn't that fantastic? Let's go to Robert, Santa Clara, California, the great KSFO. Robert, how are you?
Hey, Mark, thank you so much for taking my call. You were comparing Newsom to Clinton. I think there's no comparison. Newscum is his real name. My dog's...
No, I meant it in his mannerisms. Have you noticed his hands and all the rest? He's trying to be Clinton in his mannerisms.
My dog in the back, he doesn't like Newsom either. I have to say something about it. He's got this meme out there with his group that's depicting him held by the Secret Service with...
No, I know. We're out of time. Don't get mad at me. I agree with you. Newscum is a perfect name. Gruesome Newscum. Little dab will do him. Well, plenty of time to deal with that moron. I'm sorry, Robert. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, the men and women in Ukraine, the men and women in Israel. Mr. President, thanks for coming on the program today, and God bless you.